What is global debt? Why is it so important? Global debt is the total of the amount of the public and private sectors that the entire world owns, but it's done by country. Actually, the total debt of the entire world is $3.5 trillion on a planet with 8 billion people. So you can see that's a lot of debt. And debt can be good, it can be bad. It can be good when you're building out infrastructure or investing in infant industry. But it can also be bad when it's not managed properly. The question is how you measure it, and how economists measure debt is by using the gross domestic product, which is the total sum of finished goods and services, less imports in a country. Another way they measure it is they use something called personal purchasing parity, which tells you how much each individual has to spend within the country on debt. In this series, we're going to be talking about most of the major countries. Today, we're going to be talking about China. And so how did the world get in such a bad situation? Most of the time, it's caused by black swans, which is an unplanned event that happens in society. Going back, speaking of China, if you go back to when China first, World War II ended and Mao Zedong separated China from Taiwan, he had an edict of one-child policy. That sort of is going to come back later on to sort of show you how that was a mistake in invoking one-child policy. What actually happened later on in the 70s is President Nixon went to China and opened the door to China, and at that point China became beginning to be an industrial power. The issue with China right now is they've just recently become, from what I define, have the highest debt-to-GDP ratio of almost 300%. It's huge. And this happened just recently because China just rolled out a $1.2 trillion investment plan in the country. They need to stimulate their economy. They never really got back to work after COVID. One of the biggest problems in China is a housing problem, infrastructure problem. China, all the things you see about China with all these empty cities and roads going to nowhere are very real. Because the way China judges its gross domestic product is that each of the states of China gets a figure on gross domestic product they have to meet by the end of the year. That sort of causes the states to spend money recklessly, and that's a tremendous problem in China. There's also an issue in China called bailing. It is a problem with the Chinese youth. They're really tired. They really want to see things get better. And they've basically been dropping out of China's economy. The other problem I mentioned before was, as I mentioned, the one-child policy that was invoked in the late 40s. Now China has a problem where they have 1.7 children per family. So they're not going to have enough people to pay for all the needs of the people as they retire, and also to reinforce their working force. There's about $18 trillion invested in Chinese real estate that citizens don't even occupy. And the biggest problem from China is something that happens with some countries. Most countries have to deal with rating agencies like a Fitch or Moody's. The reason why rating agencies are important is because when countries go back to borrow money, if they have a high debt ratio, or they've had some bankruptcies, or they've had some realignments where they've had to restructure, the rating agencies will reduce will reduce their rating. And in reality, what that means is they'll have to pay more to borrow money in the future. At this point, China's rating is A+, which is pretty decent. So that's pretty much China in a nutshell. That's world debt. That's where China's at. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and have a great day. Bye.